In geopolitics, timing is rarely random. Moments that appear coincidental often carry deeper meaning beneath the surface. And sometimes, a single day can reveal the fragile balance between diplomacy and escalation in one of the world's most volatile regions. Recently, a sequence of developments captured the attention of geopolitical analysts across the globe. On one side, there were comments suggesting that diplomatic discussions with Iran might still be possible. On the other side, reports began emerging of missiles being launched toward Israel, including areas near the major city of Tel Aviv. Two completely different signals, one pointing toward diplomacy, the other suggesting confrontation. For analysts who study the strategic landscape of the Middle East, the timing of these developments immediately raised important questions. Was this simply a coincidence in a tense region where military incidents are not uncommon? Or could it represent a deeper shift in the geopolitical dynamics shaping the region? To understand why this moment matters, we first need to examine exactly what happened. The sequence began when former United States President Donald Trump made remarks indicating that the possibility of peace discussions involving Iran could still exist. According to geopolitical observers, such comments often signal that informal diplomatic channels may be active behind the scenes, even when official negotiations are not publicly underway. In international politics, public statements can sometimes serve as trial balloons, messages designed to test reactions from rival governments, allies, and the global community. However, within the same news cycle, another development began to unfold. Reports emerged that missiles had been launched toward Israeli territory, with air defense systems activating around the metropolitan region of Tel Aviv. Military monitoring organizations and regional security analysts quickly began tracking the situation. Early reports suggested that Israel's defense systems detected incoming projectiles and responded according to established protocols. At moments like these, Israel relies heavily on its multi-layered air defense network, including the well-known system called the Iron Dome, which is designed to intercept short-range rockets and missiles before they reach populated areas. When alarms activate around a major urban center such as Tel Aviv, the event quickly becomes more than just a localized security incident. It becomes a geopolitical signal. For international observers, the most striking aspect of the situation was not simply the missile launch itself, rather, it was the timing. On the same day that diplomatic language appeared in global headlines, reports of military escalation were circulating as well. This unusual overlap prompted analysts to ask whether the two developments might be connected. To explore that possibility, it is important to understand the deeper geopolitical background shaping the relationship between Iran and Israel. For decades, the rivalry between these two countries has been one of the defining strategic tensions in the Middle East. At the center of the dispute are several major issues. One of them is Iran's expanding regional influence through alliances and partnerships across the region. Another is Israel's long-standing concern about missile capabilities and nuclear development programs that could potentially alter the balance of power. These tensions intensified significantly after the United States withdrew in 2018 from the international nuclear agreement known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The agreement had been designed to limit Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for economic sanctions relief. But when the deal collapsed, the diplomatic framework that had helped contain tensions began to weaken. Since that moment, the region has experienced a pattern of strategic confrontations that rarely reach the level of full-scale war, but still carry significant geopolitical consequences. These confrontations have included cyber operations, intelligence activities, maritime incidents, and limited military strikes. Each episode contributes to a broader shadow conflict that unfolds across multiple domains. Because of this complex environment, even relatively small incidents can trigger intense international scrutiny. When missiles are reported near a major Israeli city like Tel Aviv, analysts begin examining not just the technical details of the event, but also its strategic message. Missile launches can sometimes serve as demonstrations of capability. They can signal deterrence, or they can represent pressure applied during periods of diplomatic maneuvering. In geopolitical strategy, messaging is often just as important as military force. This is why the same-day appearance of diplomatic comments and missile activity generated immediate discussion among experts. Some analysts noted that the timing could reflect internal dynamics within the region. Different actors may pursue different strategies at the same time, creating overlapping signals. Others suggested that the situation might represent an example of strategic signaling. In this context, military actions may serve as reminders of capabilities, while diplomatic conversations attempt to shape the broader political environment. Whatever the explanation, the developments quickly attracted global attention, and that attention extends far beyond the borders of Israel and Iran. The Middle East sits at the center of some of the most important economic and energy corridors in the world. One of the most strategically important routes is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow maritime passage through which a significant portion of the world's oil shipments travel. Whenever tensions rise in the region, global energy markets begin to react. Even the possibility of instability near major shipping routes can influence oil prices, investor confidence, and international trade. This is why governments around the world monitor these developments closely. Major global powers, including the United States, Russia, and China, all maintain strategic interests in the stability of the region. Diplomatic responses often begin almost immediately when incidents occur. Officials analyze intelligence reports, communicate with regional allies, and assess whether the situation risks expanding into a larger confrontation. For now, analysts believe several possible scenarios could emerge from this moment. One possibility is controlled de-escalation. In this scenario, diplomatic channels continue quietly behind the scenes, while both sides avoid actions that could trigger a larger conflict. Military incidents might still occur occasionally, but they remain limited and contained. Another possibility involves a short cycle of limited military responses. History shows that in tense regions, isolated incidents can sometimes trigger retaliatory actions that unfold over several days or weeks before stabilizing again. A third scenario involves regional proxy dynamics. Various groups across the Middle East maintain relationships with larger state actors. In certain situations, tensions between governments can spill into conflicts involving allied organizations in neighboring areas. Such dynamics can complicate diplomatic efforts because multiple actors influence the pace of escalation. Yet there is also a less obvious possibility that geopolitical observers frequently mention. Sometimes, periods of tension actually precede diplomatic breakthroughs. Before negotiations begin, rival governments often test their leverage, signal their capabilities, and attempt to strengthen their bargaining positions. In that context, a moment that appears purely confrontational might also be part of a broader strategic chess game. For now, however, the situation remains uncertain. The world has witnessed a striking contrast, discussions suggesting diplomacy on one side and reports of missile launches on the other. Moments like these illustrate why the Middle East remains one of the most closely watched regions in global politics. Every signal matters, every statement is analyzed, every military movement can carry strategic implications far beyond the immediate battlefield. For geopolitical observers, the key question is whether this moment represents a temporary spike in tensions or an early indication of a larger shift. History shows that developments between Iran and Israel rarely remain isolated events. Instead, they tend to ripple outward, influencing regional alliances, international diplomacy, and global markets. As analysts continue examining the timeline of events, governments across the world are likely assessing their next diplomatic steps. Behind closed doors, discussions may already be underway. Because in geopolitics, the most important negotiations often happen quietly, far away from public view. For now, the world is left with a powerful image of contrast. On the same day that words of diplomacy appeared in the headlines, alarms sounded over one of the Middle East's most important cities. Whether that moment becomes a turning point toward negotiations or the beginning of a new cycle of escalation remains unclear. But one thing is certain. When diplomacy and missiles appear in the same geopolitical moment, the story is rarely over. In fact, it may only be beginning, and the developments that follow could shape the balance of power in the region for years to come.